Welcome to the MindSea podcast series, Moving Digital Health. Today we're exploring the world of connected fitness with our guest Scarlet Batchelor, a brand strategist and consultant for the wellness industry. Hey Scarlett, how's it going?
Hey Reuben, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. I'm really excited for the conversation today. Maybe you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah. So my background is very much based in sports and fitness and wellness. I grew up as an athlete, and honestly, it was the community and camaraderie that I grew up with. Ultimately, I was a rower that I've sought in my adult life. And I have been lucky enough that I've also not only been able to be an individual athlete, but also to be able to create these communities and platforms within my professional life as well. So I spent a long time at New Balance on the women's business, the wellness business, and the kids business. And then 5 or 6 years ago, I decided to take the leap to the startup world. I would say that I was an entrepreneur previously, but have always craved kind of that steep learning curve and kinetic atmosphere of startups. So I launched first on my own, launching Coeo, which was an app-based fitness platform to better connect fitness instructors and their students, which is how I know you all. But then moved on, realized, man, I love being part of a team. And I had been beta testing a platform that later would be called Hydrow. So I moved to Hydrow as their VP of brand experience, and then moved from there to be the CMO at a boxing-based fitness company, Liteboxer. These days, as you said, I am a consultant in the wellness industry. I'm working on one very cool stealth launch, but I love the early months and the early years of really crafting brand identities and bringing together the teams and the tech stacks and the momentum that can really launch a platform into orbit.
That's excellent. I want to dig into about your history and how your personal fitness journey has really influenced your career path, and also understanding like what's your balance these days in terms of fitness and your career.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that I believe in balance. I believe in keeping a whole lot of balls in the air and doing a lot of really wonderful things and ensuring that a career can support kind of my passions and my family and also keep me stimulated at any given time. So I guess specific to my own fitness journey and how that has played into things, my husband and I both do what we call fast and straight line sports. We both met as rowers. I've run a few marathons. And these days I ride gravel bikes and race some cyclocross. So cycling has really fallen into my main kind of competitive endeavor. And I'm also a yogi. So I teach yoga once a week to an amazing community. We moved online 2 years ago. We're moving back to hybrid in a few weeks. But that really does, I think that's led my career, this idea of identity. I love emotional brand storytelling, and I like to allow my work to make a net positive impact on the communities it touches. So I think there's very much kind of a call and response between my experience as an athlete, and I am often trying something new. So how do you gain the skills? How do you find people who both inspire you and support you? And how do you just find those moments of elation? So I certainly find that these days in gravel. I actually met my best friend in gravel cycling on the Strava leaderboard. So I think that's a really interesting one, that the physical connection we kind of started, we were trading places on a leaderboard. And then eventually, I think she wrote a comment in my workout saying, I think we're close to each other. This might sound a little weird, but do you want to meet up? And now we're friends, and we grab dinner and we go for rides together, and we're trying to find a fun gravel race to do together this spring and summer. So certainly kind of my personal athletics have played off of my professional career, but I think underneath all of it is always craving adventure and finding community. I think there is a risk of all of us feeling kind of alone. And I love that wellness and athletics can kind of really bring together bonds that are hard to find otherwise, especially in adult life.
I love that where the digital platform facilitated the in-person connection, through fitness that turned into a friendship. And it's clear you are really an integrator, integrating, your career with your passion. I've been really hooked on Apple Fitness Plus as one of the ways I've been, finding my exercise and activity throughout the day. But I'm definitely not going to meet any friends on that, where it's, very much just a one-way street in terms of following the program. But it has been a lifesaver in terms of just, keeping healthy while at home during the pandemic. And it's really for myself has really helped me kind of find that balance by just making sure I have a way that's on demand where I can fit fitness into the busy day. So let's talk a little bit more about the connected fitness space and some of the work you've done in the past there. You mentioned Hydrow. I'd love to hear more about that story. And when you joined the company and what that was like.
Yeah, it was this incredible experience, and it is just such a cool brand that is rooted. If you talk to CEO Bruce Smith, he'll talk about it. It very much is rooted in finding this flow, and that there is nothing else like placing an oar in the water with your crew around you. And I certainly experienced that as a beta tester. So as I mentioned, my husband and I are both rowers. We had a Concept 2, kind of the traditional rowing machine at our house. And I'd heard kind of through a group of friends that they had an app that could connect to your Concept 2, and you could start to test their technology. And so, and this does have to do with kind of this integration and these connections. So I started using it, and rowing is just this crazy workout that engages 86% of your muscles. So one thing I don't think I've mentioned so far is I'm also a mom. We have 3 kids. These days they're 12, and we have 10-year-old twins. And my husband and I both work full time and are very passionate about our careers. And I got back into the rowing via the Hydrow beta test because it's just so efficient. And, you can spend 20 minutes on there and you kind of work every major muscle group. You get kind of that high as they talk about. So I started using it, and I thought to myself, this is pretty great. And at the same time, I'd seen through my work at Coeo that there really was a transition from brick and mortar to virtual platforms. Peloton was really starting to click. My friend Christy Marshall Ekman was one of the first, I want to say, 200 Peloton members. And I remember when I heard about it from her, I was like, I'm going to what? What is that? But by the time I was beta testing Hydrow, you really could see, and this is where technology has come along, you have those leaderboards, you have that camaraderie, you have a connection that, as I go back to my high school days of rowing, that's what I always craved. So I started using it, and I would share feedback. And there was somebody in customer support on the other line at the time. I thought her name was Andrea. I later met her. It's Andrea Toro. And she would write back. And we would start to talk about kind of what's there. And they really, the Hydrow team is incredible because they really wanted feedback. So I started really falling in love with the brand and also with the potential of the platform. So because I do weird things sometimes, I kind of reached through my network and I said, who's over there? And one of my husband's teammates, Adam Kraft, was over there. And I, of course, pinged him and I said, hey, can we have a conversation? And he said, hey, I'm in Asia, but sure, we can have a Skype conversation. He was over there for manufacturing. So we connected. And from there, I connected to the CEO and then later the CMO. And I guess it's kind of like my friend from the Strava leaderboard. Every once in a while, you just reach out and you see where things might go. I tell my husband I'm a happy troll on social media. Sometimes I'll just be like, hey, you're awesome, even if I don't know someone. So that was kind of my integration in and kind of how the Hydrow community served me personally. I certainly can talk about kind of my role there as well, but I wanted to pause for a moment.
Well, I just love that story. It's another way to connect, right? Starting off as a user, and then just reaching out and making those connections, and then actually joining the company, which is something that you're passionate about. So yeah, so I'd love to hear more about where things progress from there.
Yeah. Well, I think those connections and just the random reach outs is probably nothing I ever would have done in my corporate career. I always thought, I suppose it's some version of imposter syndrome where everyone around you knew more and is more connected. And mind you, I did not come to business because it was a family endeavor. My family still to this day is like, you're wonderful, but we still don't really get what you do. But it was just in the startup world, rather than just assuming everyone else knows something, I think curiosity has really kind of led a lot of my moves, whether it's reaching out to someone on the leaderboard or making friends with Andrea at Toro, in customer support at Hydrow. But my role at Hydrow really was something pretty similar. I led brand and really thought a lot about community. So working with the Hydrow athletes, who are those, amazing athletes on screen who lead you through a workout, and being able to represent them in our marketing materials, onboarding emails when someone comes on, what do they want to know? What are they talking about in this Facebook group that we created? And one of my favorite projects was working with the content team and the product team and the marketing team on training programs. So your first 2 weeks, what might it look like? Your first 4 weeks, what might it look like? And where do you need messages from those athletes to cheer you on? And what incentives do you need to keep coming back? And in a digital world, it's so often different than those high fives you get on the track, right? So what is the digital equivalent of that? And how can you provide the community with these little bites to keep them engaged and keep them rewarded, even when this is a new discipline or they're in a place where they're really trying to change their physical health? Playing with those incentives was really meaningful. And I actually have a little story about that, if I can share.
Yeah, definitely. Go on.
Yeah. So one really interesting part of Hydrow is a friend of mine from high school, Kate Freitas, joined the Hydrow community maybe 6 months after we launched. And what was really cool, she and I made a little connection because we knew each other from high school. She knew, this is Scarlett and her random connections, but she knew I was at the company. But what was really incredible is Kate really emerged as a leader in the Hydrow community, whether it was within the challenges, whether it was within the Facebook community. I mean, she was like this in high school too, cheering people on, ensuring that they feel supported, inviting others to join her in a challenge or an endeavor. And actually, after I had left Hydrow and moved on to Liteboxer, I actually saw Kate highlighted in a Hydrow email. They were highlighting community members. And it was just so gratifying and so cool to see this platform, of which I was a small part as we were building it, really being able to support others and even support someone and motivate someone who I knew in a different phase of life, who really then became a leader in that community. So I do think there's this funny balance in all of this connected fitness that ultimately it's about one-to-one relationships. But these tech platforms allow us to gain scale and connect with others who you can't meet up with up the street. And that's actually an interesting part of online yoga. And what I've been teaching the last 2 years is, as I've been teaching online, our community has expanded, and no longer is everyone 3 blocks away or 5 blocks away from this little space where we practice. Right, so now personally, I have this challenge of going hybrid next month and saying, okay, Rochelle, you're 5 miles away. We're going to keep you engaged. Kelly, you're 4 miles in the other direction. And someone else is, on the West Coast. How can we take this community that was real, went virtual, and now is going hybrid? But ultimately, it is, how do you make those one-to-one connections and drive that affiliation? And that's where technology is pretty incredible. It enables so much of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very similar to the office or workspace dilemma. People are so comfortable and used to working remote now but they also love the in-person connection of, getting in the office, and it's not like a one or the other situation anymore. Really, people like and thrive in both. So how do you cater to that and deliver a great kind of in-person experience, whether it's for employees or for members of a community? And it's really interesting problem, especially for you with your yoga class. It started off as very geographically specific. You've grown to include more people, but going forward, it's the same. It's really both going together, not one or the other anymore. And it's just an interesting new phase of collaboration, whether it's as an employee or working together and enjoying fitness together.
Agreed. And you're right. There's such a parallel to it. And it's interesting. South by Southwest was the other week. I wasn't down there. My husband was down for .edu, but it is amazing. You really could see and feel the energy of people making individual connections again. So I totally agree. How do you create those touch points, those moments, but also allow for the flexibility and frankly, the efficiency of being apart sometimes as well.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned before that our connection is from your startup days when you started your own platform, Coeo. So this was an app that connected people with in-person trainers and in-person physical classes. And we worked together to help blueprint out that app and what it looked like. I'm wondering what were the most valuable things you learned about starting your own company and trying to build that community.
Yeah, well, it was humbling and thrilling all at once. I think the most important thing that I learned was a growth mindset. And it's funny, my kids were learning it in elementary school, while at the same time I was learning it as an entrepreneur. But as the Elmo video on Sesame Street says, I think it's the power of yet. So I don't know that yet. I can't do that yet. And maybe we'll talk later. I launched a podcast myself this morning, and that's been quite the journey. I don't know how to process those audio files yet. But that growth mindset was just so powerful because it allowed me to be curious and dig into anything and kind of develop some grit along the way that I can't expect myself to know X, Y, or Z out of the gate. How in the world would I know it? So I think number one was that growth mindset and the power of yet. And number two, which is very much why I engaged with MindSea and why it was so great to work with you and your team, which is you don't actually have to know everything. Maybe you want to know enough to be dangerous. And certainly as a leader myself, I think one thing that allows me to drive value is the ability to ask questions and make connections. But building a team has been, and knowing what resources to bring on was really powerful. And I think that's something I learned with Coeo, and it's something that I learned through working with the MindSea team. But as I transitioned on to Hydrow and Liteboxer, and certainly in my current endeavors as well, I think it's so interesting. You don't need everyone to be full-time. There's such a power to contractors or agencies. And we did that a lot at Liteboxer. I almost think about it as building a building, and that you have kind of these pieces of scaffolding. And eventually, maybe you might bring on a full-time team. Maybe you have an agency. Maybe long-term, it's something where you have to stay so current that you actually want someone who's always focused on a particular subject matter. But I think bringing in the right team and recognizing that the look of that might be a little bit different. And certainly in recent years and within COVID and all that, the kind of rise of freelancers has been huge. And now here I am on the other side of it. So that was really powerful, is where do you find the resources where you don't yourself have the knowledge? And then I think the third piece really was understanding my own expertise. Because when you strip everything else away, I had been at New Balance for over 8 years. And sometimes when you're in an environment for so long, I don't know, maybe in some ways, like you can lose your identity, or it's like, it's just because it's a similar fabric day to day, it's a similar business dynamic. It's actually hard to see yourself in isolation. So I think through that process, maybe it's the counterpoint of the power of yet, I also realized my true expertise and could better articulate to myself and to others the value that I bring to the table. And these days, as I'm working with client roster, that's really big. And what I've come to realize is I'm an expert in storytelling, kind of this balance between emotional and rational. I can pick up those pieces, put them all together, and then translate it to hopefully something beautiful and positive, but also commercial. I still like the business side of it. I still love the thrill of selling. It probably goes to, I love the thrill of racing. So yeah, recognizing my own superpower. So growth mindset, the power of the team, whether it's contract, agency, or full-time partners. And then finally recognizing my own superpower and expertise within it by stripping everything away and seeing where you land.
Well, definitely enjoying your storytelling today. So many great stories. And I really agree with you on the team building aspect. It's one of the joys of my job of the CEO of MindSea is there's a whole lot I don't know about app development. But we have a great leadership team, director of technology that is really been able to take the lead on that and take that off my plate. We have a director of product management now that's really growing the product expertise within the organization, and to see people as leaders in their own right of teams within our larger team is just so rewarding that sometimes I just get to sit back and watch them do their thing and just be awed, because I know that I could never do what they're doing, and it's a great joy to see those different talents and different expertise come together as a group with the whole company.
Yeah, totally agree. That is kind of the best part of it, right? You bring the best people together and then you get out of the way.
Yeah, I try to, but I understand what you meant about being part of a larger company, and then going out on your own. Like that's a big leap of faith, and where you're existing within this framework before, and have all these guidelines and processes in place. When you're doing your own startup, you have to figure out a lot of that on your own, and it can be a little bit scary. So, we try as much as possible to use our experience, working with multiple startups to build, sometimes their first app or their first software product, to take away that, some of those unknowns and show them a clear path of, okay, we're going to, work through the user journeys and really understand the problem we're solving, and, dig into those personas. And it can be really fun, being the the mentors or the guiders almost of, people that are really, entrepreneurial and experts in their field, whether it's fitness or, wellness or healthcare, but sometimes really don't know anything about software development, and, coming together with them as a team and building something special can be really rewarding to see the outputs of that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's when it gets really fun.
Cool. So looking back on, all the different projects that you've done, is there one that stands out as being the most meaningful or most impactful, and close to your heart?
All the projects, that's a tough one. Well, one of the first kind of full P&Ls I led, so profit and loss kind of full businesses I led, was during my New Balance time. And I led the global kids footwear team. And I don't know if I got the job because I had the most little kids at home or what. It was right after my twins were born. So certainly was at a time of kind of high stress and high activity. But it was so exciting because I really got to exercise something that I do all the time now, and got to realize it was kind of my signature and what I love most, which is kind of listening leadership. So it's a global team. You have a whole lot of markets. You have one great brand in New Balance, both kind of lifestyle classic shoes as well as kind of performance running shoes. And we would make mini me versions of that, as well as some kind of more kidified, only toyetic shoes as well. And what I loved was coming into that role and starting with listening. And it was pretty cool because I got to go to the markets as well. But you go to China and it's like, okay, everyone wears Velcro, or as they call it, hook and loop shoes, because you got to take your shoes off every time you go inside. And you're going to wear that type of closure until you're like adult size, which you would never do here in the US. And then going to Japan and understanding the rich history of classics and really what that means fashion wise. And then understanding the US market as well, whether it's kind of something more lifestyle and trendy or utilitarian and functional, because so many of us are going to Kohl's and getting our kids shoes. And I loved that assignment because it allowed me to really listen to the team, ensure every market was enfranchised, and then working back with the global hub and saying, okay, China needs this, Japan needs that, the UK needs this, and then here in the US, this is where we need to go. How do we balance this portfolio and optimize our resources within it? And hey, we also have to listen to where the adult team is investing advertising dollars, because that's going to help us as well. And so I guess it goes back to kind of making those connections, leading with listening, but also leading with positivity. I guess the experience that drives my work the most is unrelated to work. It's related to athletics, kind of. My husband went to graduate school at the University of Washington in Seattle. And when he finished, I was starting my MBA program here in Boston. And so we had to move from Seattle to Boston. And we actually had done the same 2 years before. We had driven from Boston to Seattle for him to start his program. And we thought, well, let's not drive back. Let's ride our bikes back. Wow. Rather than driving back, we rode our bikes, and we somehow enlisted 4 other people, other friends, to either quit their jobs or they were going in or out of grad school. And so 6 of us left Seattle on the summer solstice a long time ago, knew that we had to get to Boston 7 weeks later. And the route was about 4,000 miles. And we had a car. So every 6th day, one of us would drive because our dog was in the car. And we just had to get there. And in the early weeks, we did less mileage because no matter how hard you trained, you can't train to be on your bike 12 or 14 hours a day. And we camped every night. We had a little kitchen, quote unquote, in a plastic bin in the car. And we just would go and go. And we called ourselves Team Delusional because on summer solstice day, where everyone was partying in Ballard and dancing, in Seattle, we dipped our wheels in the ocean and set off. And we knew we had to get to Boston. And there were tough moments and there were beautiful moments. And there were days when we had mostly a tailwind. Thank goodness for the jet stream. We had a couple tough headwind days. But we made it, and our tires were dipped in the Boston Harbor 7 weeks later. But I think that idea of setting a goal and just going for it and figuring it out really informs a lot of what I've done, whether it was leading the global kids team at New Balance to really drive some incredible growth, or joining these startups, or even driving my own startup as well, saying, all right, that's a goal. It's probably not a straight line to get there, but F that S, I won't swear. Like, let's just go and let's see what adventures come about.
Yeah, I think there is real power in goal setting, but also, like you said, being humble to be open to different paths of getting there. And sometimes we're working with entrepreneurs that they have a vision, they have a real clear vision of the product they want to build. But as you say, if you're not leading with listening and really listening to the customer and what their problems are and what they're looking for, you really run the risk of building something that's not the right fit for the customers you're after. So that approach of leading with listening and just being open to wherever the path takes you, certainly seen that work time and time again. That the flexibility over rigidity, even when there's a firm goal, is so important in business.
Totally. And knowing when to embrace conviction and when to roll with the flexibility, I think that's the unknown factor. It reminds me of sometimes I'll put something together. There's a client I'm working with right now and put together kind of the copy for the homepage. And I said, I know it's 80% right, but I don't know what 80%, right? And I think so often figuring out what 20% needs adjustment, especially in early stage brands and as you engage with entrepreneurs, I think that is what's so hard. And as a solo entrepreneur or a founding entrepreneur, and I know often this is probably clients that you're working with, that point of view can get really dizzy. When do you know when to listen? When do you know when to hold your ground? And frankly, there's probably never an answer to that. And there are infinity paths forward. But I found that really hard as an entrepreneur, really knowing. And ultimately, I think that's why I really like working with teams, because I learn more and I think better when I have someone to kind of bounce ideas off of and try things on for size.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to switch gears and talk about your new podcast that you're launching this week, and get the story behind that.
I love it. Thanks for asking. Yeah. So just today, I launched Brand New Women, which is a podcast focused on women in business and in marketing. And, for so much of my career, I have been the only, if not one of the only women in the room. And I'm really excited in terms of the stories that are out there. But often, as a female business leader, sometimes I feel lonely and I just crave more stories. Now, okay, fine, I'm a storyteller, so I guess I also thrive in hearing these stories. But, you hear the story of Sarah Blakely and Spanx, and that's incredible. And there are other just touching female business leaders out there. But my hypothesis is if we could hear more stories and more moments that were unclear, right? Hear another entrepreneur talk about, do I stand my ground or do I flex? Hearing about wins and hearing about failures, that is something for me that really motivates me. So then when I find myself in a sticky situation, I can think back to this story or this podcast. So my hypothesis is, don't we all want to hear more stories? And not just women business leaders ourselves, but allies out there that want to think about how can we support greater gender as well as other dimensions of diversity in the workplace, especially as we're cultivating future leaders. So I've pulled together a great roster of female leaders out there. Many of them come from unique places. So for example, episode 1 features Hannah Cole, who is the founder and leader of Sunlight Tax, which is a tax platform that is focused on creatives, freelancers, and very much seeks to support a diverse audience, very focused in the trans community, and really empowering artists and creatives to own their financial health and financial success. And Hannah herself is a painter by training, but then started trying to do her accounting and her taxes and said, my goodness, I don't know how to do this. And then it hit a moment when she had her first kid and thought, ooh, I have to find other sources of income. And all of this swirled together into Sunlight Tax, which has just grown by leaps and bounds. So it's stories like Hannah's story. I'll be talking to Petal Mohammed, Ingru Chen, who just recently launched a breathtaking art gallery and has been placing a lot of great work into top museums. She has become kind of this ultimate curator through Praise Shadows. So really bringing in more stories that can motivate and inspire so many of us out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the joys of working on this podcast as well, is hearing the stories about digital health and all the different innovation and all the different leaders and personalities that are pushing this industry forward in so many different ways. So we're really excited to hear your podcast there, and we'll definitely be tuning in to hear some of those stories. You mentioned about the learning the lessons from other women leaders. I'm wondering how your membership in the Chief organization has been part of that, and how that's helped you as a woman in tech as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think this all comes back full circle, right? When I introduced myself, I talked about fitness platforms that provide community and camaraderie. And as an athlete, which has been one of my top three, maybe identifiers of myself as an individual, certainly being a woman in business is something that defines me as well. And going back to kind of that loneliness that can come about when you don't have people like you to your left or to your right, I think Chief has been a really cool and rapidly growing organization that seeks to do just that. And for example, Michelle Obama spoke to our leadership a few weeks ago, and Chief really does identify a cohort of women who have achieved a level of success, done some really cool things. So I'm on this call, and of course it's me and a couple thousand other people, but it was just so striking to me as Michelle Obama told all of us, including me, but I told my husband later, I was like, Michelle Obama told me I already made it. But it is true that it is so empowering sometimes to have essentially what Chief is all of those stories that I will tell within Brand New Women. Those are living, breathing humans that are so impressive to your left and to your right within this network and community. So for me, that has been really meaningful. I've loved being a part of it. And frankly, it has certainly inspired me to create more webs of kind of inspiration and motivation. And I think Chief has been a real innovator in doing that over the last few years.
Yeah, that's awesome and so inspiring. So I have two daughters, age 7 and 10, and there's just so many great resources out there now that celebrate women leaders, and Michelle Obama definitely being one of the most inspiring all time. I know my daughters and I read her books sometimes together. And she has another book that's 5-minute stories for rebel girls, that again talks about all these different women leaders. And it's just great that there's so many role models and so many inspiring stories out there for young women to see themselves as leaders as well, and know that that's a possibility for them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it is one interest. It's great to recognize that there are more examples out there. And there is something that Hannah and I talked about a bit in her episode on Brand New Women that I think is important to bring up, which is you can be both an outsider and someone of privilege at the same time. So on one hand, in Brand New Women, I want to elevate more women's voices, and totally we've got good night stories for rebel girls as well. So wanting to kind of enfranchise female identifiers to see those stories. But at the same time, I also recognize that as a white woman, I come from immense privilege as well. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to realize or to recognize. And for myself, I always try to walk that duality, as a white person, I come with a lot of privilege. At the same time, as a female in business, I also at times I'm part of a minority as well. And there's a history there. So it is interesting. And I try to ensure that I kind of walk both of those sides, kind of recognize the privilege of what it means to be white in this society, but at the same time, recognize that we do need more stories. So more stories, not just of myself as a white female leader, but ensuring that there's kind of diversity within that. And I would actually argue Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls does that really, really well. But within my work, I always want to recognize kind of the privilege, but as well as kind of that unique place of being a woman in business.
Yeah, it really is so multifaceted, and there's so many different things to consider. I've been, also just trying to learn more about, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how to, make that part of their organization at MindSea. We were talking with a consultant the other day, and they were speaking about how a lot of companies say, hey, we have great culture, everyone's really nice here, they get along, and this is not a problem here. So we don't really have to, get into it too much. But it's so important to realize that, we, whether it's a business or an individual, we exist within our society and the constructs of that, and all the, the history that brought us to where we are today. As a society, there has been a lot of discrimination, and you just can't think of yourself in isolation as this little group that's all kumbaya and working well together. It's you are part of the larger picture, and that larger picture influences people's behavior and their feeling of belonging, and so it's just I'm really enjoying the education of just being more literate and starting to understand that more, and really looking forward to making strides to really recognizing that context and making diversity, equity, inclusion a real part of the DNA, and also not just within our organization, and then be an advocate for that for our other partners or organizations we work with as well.
That's great. That's awesome. So much great stuff to do, great work to do. It's an exciting time. It's wild, but it's also exciting.
Yeah, I was hoping to kind of get back to the connected fitness space. I'm interested to hear your take on, what the future of this space holds. I know there's just been so much innovation and so much change, and influenced by the pandemic, and now kind of hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood, really coming out of that into a new reality. What do you see that's emerging and exciting out there?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm kind of two minds on all of this. First off, I know the Peloton stock has been so hammered lately, but I don't want to forget about the fact that so many of these brands, whether it's Peloton or Hydrow or Liteboxer, are so beloved and are driving just magical experiences and getting people healthier every day. I feel like in business news, it is so fun to have a story and see all of these arcs and these movements. But I think it is important to not forget about the fact that people are getting healthier and humans feel seen, right? And it's an unprecedented time that technology can support that. So first and foremost, I think the work that has happened in connected fitness to date is really exciting. And then within that, the two kind of sides of the coin is, I think there is more exciting kind of innovation on the horizon in kind of measurement of self. Certainly, Whoop has made some great strides. Oura Ring, kind of different approach to similar metrics, is really exciting. I can't wait until Super Sapiens launches. There's another business called Levels. So it's a continuous glucose monitor. So kind of taking the technology that's used for diabetics when it comes to kind of nutrition and metabolism, and translating that over to athletes or everyday humans. I'm on the wait list, but I really want to try that. And I'm so curious. So that's one side of things, right? The kind of measurable self. And I think that will continue to develop. And here I am saying, oh, I can't wait for this one to launch. I want it. But I think there's a counterpoint to that. And I recently took the course by Dr. Laurie Santos on the science of well-being. It's actually offered through Coursera, so you too can do it for free. But I think what's so interesting there is a lot of the research reveals that where we find the greatest happiness is through experiences. And our mind tricks us into this concept of miswanting, thinking, I need that next car, maybe I need that next result. But maybe the most magical moments are, I can think of flying down the hill in Vermont on my gravel bike with the winds kind of hitting me and kind of staying stable and working through turns. Like those experiences, those moments, that's probably what we all crave. But the darn marketers out there, like me, start to identify those moments with objects, right? So I think the two sides of the coin with wellness and kind of digital health as it all moves forward is, on one hand, how can these tools help us to listen and measure and I guess feel rewarded? But at the same time, some days maybe we should just burn them all and go out for a walk with our best friend, or, bike down that hill. And it doesn't matter if I'm getting that QOM or not on the Strava leaderboard. So I do think it's going to be a balance and a dance. And I really do hope that all of us can focus on those experiences and thinking of these stats and this technology unlocking better health rather than the technology being at the very top of our priority list, right? Going back to if you didn't record it on Strava, did that workout happen at all? Yeah, it happened.
I felt a similar guilt when not wearing my Apple Watch for a workout. It's like, if I didn't close my exercise ring, did that workout even mean anything? And be like, no, it's still good. Like I still got my exercise, but it's you feel like you're missing out because you don't have that that validation or that little check mark that you wanted to accomplish that day. So.
Yeah, I'm currently in a quiet March. My Apple Watch died, so I'm working on Shinola, and even the date and the moon phase aren't right. So all this thing does right now is tell time. But I've kind of challenged myself to do it for the month and see what I feel like.
Yeah, sometimes you do just have to disconnect and really try and be in the moment and optimize for those in-person or those visceral experiences of just being out there in the fresh air and not looking at a screen.
Absolutely.
Cool.
If you figure it out, let me know, please.
I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Really enjoyed the stories and the conversation today. Was there anything else that you wanted to chat about or questions for me while we're here?
I think this has been great. It's been great to hear a little bit more about kind of where you're focused on MindSea and how your teams are evolving. And it was really fun to be able to share a little bit of kind of that new platform with brand new women. So I would just love to ask that everyone give it a listen. Let me know what you think. And I love getting engaged with MindSea again. And it is just magic in terms of, as entrepreneurs, what we can do to build these teams, not defining it by internal or external, but instead building this magical web of talent and setting a vision. It's just really cool to see what you all do in this digital health and wellness space. It's just such a rich moment, and you guys are just such innovators within it. So it's great to chat.
Cool. Thank you very much. And hopefully, looking forward to coming down to Boston again for a visit. Maybe we'll go for a run or a mountain bike or something like that to get out there and have those experiences. For everyone listening, yes, please check out Brand New Women, the Scarlett's upcoming podcast. And if you like this episode of Moving Digital Health at MindSea, please subscribe to the newsletter and you'll be notified about future episodes. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Reuben.